Hey, what's up guys, Steven here, and I've got a bit of a different video today. You know those movies that you see at the dollar store? The ones that you never knew existed, but have one or two actors you kind of recognize? Well, most of them are free on YouTube with ads, so I'm going to watch a bunch and share my thoughts. Welcome to Bargain Bin. So today's movie is The Great Bear, and it was made in 2011 by Copenhagen Bombay, a production studio out of Denmark, and scrolling through their webpage, they actually made a ton of movies. This particular one focuses on a brother and sister that go to visit their grandfather in the mountains. He lives right on the edge of a great forest that is as mysterious as it is endless. So, with a spoiler warning, let's get into the movie. First, I'd like to say I hope this is still the graphic they use for the logo, because it looks like something that should be before a GameCube game, and I love it. Anyway, the movie begins with alternating perspectives of one of the main characters, Jonathan, and a hunter with impossibly hairy arms. When I first saw this, because of how it's edited, I thought it was just the kid imagining himself in a more exciting scenario. These are actually two different people hunting in two situations. But focusing on the kid, he is playing with his sister Sophie and hunting her down with a squirt gun. I don't know if it's a translation thing or bad acting, but throughout the movie, the interactions between the brother and sister seem so unnatural.
Stop it!
Fiddles ripped you to shreds!
Using a horse as bait is cheating.
The pony is Fiddle's best friend.
Whatever. I don't have time to play anymore.
This isn't how real kids talk. This isn't even really how real people talk. So the two of them head out to their grandfather's house, and the animation looks pretty good in these traveling shots, but the music makes it seem like they're heading into a horror movie. That of death isn't part of the actual title, but it's weird how well it fits. So the grandpa meets them at the stop, and they're heading to his cabin, and he talks about the forest behind his home.
It's never ever been felled. It's just grown and grown and grown.
Sophie decides she doesn't want to walk anymore, so Jonathan gets the bags, and she gets a ride. For about 5 steps total.
Here we are.
Once their grandfather lets them loose, Sophie finds a treehouse, but Jonathan calls it his hunting lodge, and is adamant about not letting her in. He tells her not to get any closer, and that brings on another very awkward moment.
Watch it.
Why?
If you do it again, I'll give you a wedgie.
You can't catch me!
So they run off, and the world's strongest butterfly straight up rips this nail out of the treehouse, because Jonathan is a shitty builder. As he's working on his hunting lodge, Sophie helps by going to get nails, but on her way back, she goes past the door to the great forest. She walks over and yanks on the door until it opens, and then a frog jumps through. And I have to warn you, it may not have the same effect on you, but the frog's sounds make me want to throw up. Disgusting. Sophie picks up the frog and gives it a pet, and that makes it croak, and then suddenly a single drop of rain falls from the sky. She does it again, and the same thing happens. And now you're probably thinking the same thing Sophie was. Logic dictates that it must be rain frog.
Rain frog. When it croaks, it rains.
Obviously. But when she tries to show Jonathan, it won't croak. So curious, Jonathan tries to get it to croak. Well, he tries for a couple of seconds and then just shakes the shit out of it, making the animal croak multiple times in terror. And now I know what you're thinking. Steven, this is a rain frog. If it croaked that much, then doesn't it mean yes? While it rains outside, the grandfather tells him that there are all kinds of weird animals back there, but namely, a huge bear. He explains that people used to live back there, but moved, and now no one remains. That night, when the two of them are in bed, Jonathan goes off the story and retcons that the people didn't move, and they were actually all eaten by the huge bear. And he actually scares himself with his own story. Next morning, Jonathan is working on the hunting lodge, and out of nowhere, Sophie comes in with some casual attempted murder. Oh, siblings. The treehouse falls and Jonathan is fuming, so he chases Sophie, who takes refuge on the other side of the door to the great forest. She doesn't let him through, and he gives up, then deciding to block her from coming back, and also tossing the frog in the jar over the fence to shatter. Man, this kid really doesn't like frogs. Then, very uncomfortably, an eyeball opens, and we hear some massive moving, and Sophie's gone. Their grandfather comes out to find the hunting lodge in ruin and no children. Jonathan, I guess, not wanting to get in trouble, goes to find Sophie without saying anything. He really doesn't make much progress on his first day. He finds his sister's bear, throws her boot at some birds, and has to go and get it. Normal first day adventure stuff, you know? And then, naturally, when night comes, Jonathan lights a fire, and dozens of frogs come hopping from the lake he's next to. It almost seems like their battle cries work against them because their croaks of war bring a downpour, and because, rain frogs. So Jonathan runs to hide in the cave, and luckily it's the same one that Sophie's in with her new friend, Mr. Bear. Freaked out, Jonathan tries to escape with Sophie, but she isn't so keen on getting away. She tries to call out to the bear, and he smacks the shit out of her, and the tone gets weirdly serious.
Behave yourself. Don't be angry.
Sophie!
He won't hurt you. I don't want a big brother who hits me.
So Sophie and the bear walk away, leaving Jonathan once again in this massive forest alone. Suddenly, something moves. And here in this grove of tiny trees is a tiny moose. It does clock Jonathan good, so I guess it's pretty cool. Jonathan gets mad and throws a rock at the moose, which he easily dodges, and then starts to play with the rock. Okay. He then finds a weird-looking tree that has triangular leaves at the top, but he shouldn't be here because the tiny moose has returned, and it returned with an assault force and signals the attack. There's something in this movie about animals attacking in force. Then, in case he didn't think that things could get worse, Jonathan falls into a massive trap and is stuck there for the night. But next morning he's rescued by the hairy arms that made the trap. That's right, it's the hunter from the beginning.
Run along home. The great forest is no place for kids.
I don't know where home is.
He doesn't want this kid to be alone in the woods, so he allows him to tag along. As they're walking, the hunter's dogs start barking at a big earth pimple, so the hunter aims down and pulls the trigger. Holy shit! What kind of gun is that? He left a hole the size of a small meteor impact. Once indoors, the hunter dresses Jonathan's wounds with one of the triangular leaves seen on the top of that strange tree earlier. The hunter tells him to leave the forest, but he says he can't because his sister's chilling with a giant bear. The very same bear that the hunter has been blowing up earth pimples trying to find. Apparently, the hunter was part of the village of people that used to live there, and they built their village over the hibernating bear, and then it woke up and destroyed their homes. I found this weird. I mean, it was mostly their fault for building over it, so why does he want the bear dead?
Well, you saw how big it is. It's too dangerous to live.
So this guy thinks that because the giant bear unknowingly destroyed a town built over him, he's now a danger to everybody and anybody.
But it was the bear's fault.
Okay. He even admits that no one stayed to help him do this. They all fled, probably to build their homes not over a large animal. But regardless, he stayed to hunt it and set traps. What would happen if he did kill it? I imagine that everybody else has lives wherever they move to, so they wouldn't come back, especially to all squeeze into this shack that he built in case they do come back. So his motivation is childish. Instead of blaming the townspeople who were obviously at fault, he blames the bear for destroying the town and making everybody leave. so naturally it needs to die. Fully aware of what he intends to do, Jonathan leads the hunter to the bear because he knows he can get in close. So they get to the cave where Jonathan met Sophie and the bear, and the hunter has him go in and lure the bear out, and doesn't do it himself because...
It's too dark in there to take aim.
Okay, so in he goes, and without even seeing the bear or hearing a signal, the hunter immediately fires into the cave, almost hitting Jonathan.
Thought the bear was behind you.
It wasn't.
Okay, so we're just gonna pretend that didn't happen and move on. The bear isn't there, so they continue their hunt by following the scent of the bear hair. They don't have any luck because apparently the bear goes underground whenever the hunter is around. I didn't even try that one. So Jonathan heads out alone to find the bear and bring him to a big tree where the hunter will be waiting. He takes one of the dogs with him and eventually finds Sophie and the bear enjoying a snack. Sophie is defiant and still doesn't want to go with him, so he apologizes to her and the bear.
When someone apologizes, then everything's okay.
Okay, so we're good now. So they head to the tree where the hunter's waiting, but when they get there, the birds warn the bear that something is afoot, and while he tries to convey this to the kids, he's shot in the mouth. Jonathan falls off, but Sophie is still on the bear, and the hunter reloads. Jonathan charges to stop him and knocks the gun as it fires. Dead. So I think the thing I learned most from this movie... No, she didn't actually die. Instead, the hunter teleports over to her and essentially takes her hostage.
Jonathan, help me!
Yeah, she seems really worried about the situation as a whole. So after a bit of footy child abuse, Sophie is gone and Jonathan needs to find the bear. But man, I bet it took off. They got shot in the mouth. That thing is probably running for the hills. He's scared of the gun. Oh, look, he's right there. So I'll just believe that the hunter never turns around and that the dogs and he also don't hear this very loud argument that Jonathan has with the bear. Okay. So then, this being a children's animated movie, naturally, Jonathan tracks the bear via blood trail, and when he finds it, he convinces it to let him jump in its mouth to take the bullet out of its tongue. This is actually a really gross scene, and when Jonathan comes out, he is smattered in blood, like Ghost of Tsushima levels of blood. He's also holding a bullet about the size of his own hand. Seriously, what gun is he using? Jonathan then grabs the magic healing leaves for the bear's tongue, and by the morning they've made up and are ready to head out. But for their plan to save Sophie to work, Big Boy needs a bath. But before he gets into the lake, Jonathan takes a smelly hair, which he later ties to a bird to get the dog's attention, I guess. The plan seems to be going well, but this stupid fucking bird catches sight of them across a valley and falls out of the tree, then proceeds to head straight towards them. I'm sure this only happens to lead to the super tense close call that happens, but eventually the bird does get what it's supposed to do and leads the dogs and the hunter away. The duo make their way to the house, and Jonathan finds that his rescue is unwanted.
I don't want to be saved by you. Friddles is dead and it's your fault. And the door is locked, so you can't get me out of here. I'll never talk to you again.
I hate you, Jonathan. You suck. I'm not going anywhere with you, and that's my choice. Plus the door's locked. But that's okay, because the bear once again destroys this man's entire life. Not to mention his dogs are currently being ominously surrounded by tiny moose. But yeah, they're tiny moose. So the hunter is on to them. Meanwhile, Sophie is trying to get the bear to fix the house. But they hear the dogs, and in their desperation to get away, the bear steps in the house and takes it with them on his foot. Now we're getting into the final act of the movie. First, the kids decide it's best to leave the bear because it's them putting him in danger. But that already happened. The bear is currently in danger, and they're choosing now to leave. There is still a hunter hell-bent on taking this bear out. And oh, yeah, hey, there he is. Yep, up to those rascally tricks again. So like most animated movie villains, the hunter just starts setting fire to everything. And seeing this, of course, the two children jump back into action. And that makes sense. You got rock, kids, fire. Kids beat fire. Rocks, you can beat a kid with a rock. In the heat of it, this massive mountain-sized bear is being driven back by two dogs. Anyway, they back him into the trap, which is right here. Don't you remember? The trap? It's right there. Back to the dogs, though. How do they pose any threat in any way? When the bear starts to fall into the trap, its falling motion accidentally sends one of the dogs flying. Then seconds later, he gets serious and just whips them both off his paw like annoying bugs. Fuck it, I guess. So the hunter has the bear in a sticky situation, and Jonathan the child comes to the rescue. For some reason, the hunter just keeps getting closer to the bear instead of shooting at this insanely large target. It gives time for Jonathan to sneak up behind and get thwacked by the butt of the gun because he's a child. But this makes the bear angry, and he climbs out of the trap and it immediately presents a much larger target for the hunter to shoot. But he just runs away. And so Sophie runs up to find Jonathan, and they decide they need to do something about the fire. So they make a plan to find the rain frogs. Why include that? But yeah, they do it. Rain frogs. And back where the real action is, Jonathan and Sophie roll up just as the bear has the hunter cornered and is about to take him out. He's about to finish him. Sophie speaks passionately to the bear and says, "No, this endless forest is big enough for the two of you." And the bear's like, "Yeah, cool." And the hunter's like, "Fuck that," and shoots the bear. Then immediately gets crushed. Things aren't looking so good, so Jonathan fishes in this massive crater to pull the bullet out. Seriously, what kind of fucking gun was that? This part is weirdly gross, a lot like the tongue bit. But the animals of the forest start to rain down the leaves for Jonathan to shove into this hole. I'm guessing in their heads, the writers thought this would be an emotional, quite powerful moment, but never once in the movie do we see the bear interact with the forest or the animals other than burying himself. So, why do they care? But he's all bitter. And the kids head home. Oh, their grandfather. They've been gone for like 3 days at this point.
Boy, that is so weird.
And I think it's weird since I told you to stay in the garden.
Granddad!
Oh, okay. So, that was The Great Bear. And yeah, what a movie. I did like some things about it. First, there were some parts where the animation looked really good, and you could tell a lot of work went into the shots. Others were not so great. I believe the music for this movie won some awards. Maybe it was just nominated, but when it's not weirdly placed over moments that should be setting the tone for the movie, it was really good. Specifically, some of the music that played in the later, more tense moments definitely helped add some drama that would have been lacking because of the animation. I obviously wasn't a fan of the writing for this movie. It almost felt like they were going off templates for this type of movie. They knew they wanted a big animal in a big place and main characters that are brother and sister. Then they bullet pointed all of the cliche things that you would find in one of those movies and wrote their story around that. That's why in this movie there are a bunch of very common storytelling points that don't end up having any impact. For instance, like I mentioned earlier, the bad guy, he has to light a fire and burn some shit. But the fire doesn't interact with the characters at all. Bear on fire? Not a problem. The only two who seem to be vulnerable to it are the kids, and they just find the frogs and almost immediately put it out. No one is ever hurt or backed into a corner because of it, and you barely see any damage in the forest. And on top of that, I think at this point it's a bit stereotypical for the villain in one of these movies to meet his own demise. You know, he did this to himself, and the kids had nothing to do with it. The bear probably had something to do with it, actually. Another example is this idea that they try to portray in the beginning of Sophie being scared of things. First off, whenever Jonathan tried to scare her, he usually scares himself more. And then on top of that, Sophie was the first one to see the massive bear, fell from said bear multiple times, was kidnapped at gunpoint, and never once gave a fuck. She didn't even want to be rescued by Jonathan when he came for her because she thought he got the bear killed. Anyway, to sum it up, my takeaway from this movie is whoever made it set out to make a kids movie instead of creating a story that happened to be a kids movie. And I think when you see the two, the difference is clear. But those are some of the thoughts I have on the movie. If you're interested in anything I talked about, I encourage you to watch the movie for yourself. Like I said at the beginning, it's free to watch on YouTube with ads, so you just have to sacrifice a little bit of time, but that's not a big deal. Not all movies are good, but you can find enjoyment from all if you want to. I'll be making more of these videos to explore that a bit, and will do my best to make it something I upload every Friday. So hopefully it can be a fun start to the weekend. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time.